What's going on, guys? It's Kaiga voiceover here, and today we're coming back with you another what if. What if Issei was betrayed? Betrayed to Helen back by DreadedDemise. I've been trying to figure out my schedule just a little bit, and as of now, we should be able to get one, if not two, what if voiceover videos done every day. And for my gaming content, we're still working on that. I'm trying to figure out what to do. It's a little bit more complicated than just being able to talk. But I do hope you enjoy the content I put out. Maybe a like and a subscribe to let me know I am doing something right. But let's get straight into the what if. Coco Bill was surprised to see the boy blow up his cell. He was amused that he was being broke out of prison by the person who helped imprison him. Issei Hyodo, or should I say, Sekirituai, he spoke with a grin. Kokobile, Issei replied dryly. So what can I do for you on this fine day? He asked sarcastically. He knew something was up. Why would the boy who helped imprison him be here to help break him out? Well, let's see. I've got a proposition for you. One that you couldn't refuse, Issei said with a shit-eating grin. Oh? Please enlighten me on this proposition you have, Kokobile replied back. Issei looked directly at him and spoke. A storm's coming. One that will change the world forever. You can have the chance to be on the winning side. You can even take Sergi's head and put it on the wall, Issei spoke with a grin. Kokobile's eyes widened. Explain. That's all he said. So Issei explained to him how he was betrayed and how he came back and started to plan out. He knew Kokobile would join since he heard about the war coming. His eyes lightened up. So let me get this straight. You were betrayed by the factions and you ended up dead. And then you were chosen by Bahamut, the most powerful dragon to exist, to bring back the dragons and bring about a new change in the world. On top of it all, you have your own group that is going to war against the factions? He asked aloud. Correct, Issei replied. Count me in, Kokobile shouted in glee. Issei chuckled. Very, very well then. However, there are some things we need to go over first, Issei said seriously. Kokobile looked at him like he was expecting that. Okay, go on. 1. We're going to heaven first. I need you to give me the coordinates. 2nd, we're going to gather allies afterwards. Then we'll regroup with the rest of the group at Vali's mansion. Lastly, Rias and her peerheads are mine to kill. Issei spoke very seriously. You got a deal, boy, Kokobile said with a grin. Issei stood up and motioned for Kokobile to follow him. Kokobile had a question that he needed to ask. What about Hades? He asked. Decapitated, Issei replied bluntly. Damn, Kokobile replied. He couldn't believe it. This kid had changed this much. You remember how he protected the peerage with his life. Now he was as deadly and cunning as a cobra. He wouldn't want to be on the receiving end of his attacks. He wondered how strong he was now. With Dragon Bahamut, it had to be mind-boggling. So how do we get to heaven? Issei asked. Kokobile told him the coordinates, and Issei put them in the magic circle, and both of them stepped through. When they got there, it was surprising to Issei. It was as he thought it would be, only more. White and gold covered the buildings for miles, as far as they could see. Issei looked to the side to see Kokobile looking in disgust. It was obvious he didn't like the place at all. Halt! Who goes there? A voice above them shouted. They looked up to see a group of armored angels with golden spears. Issei smirked and shouted, Bring me to your leaders! he shouted back, his voice dripping with power. Everyone felt it. They shivered at the commanding presence it held. They had no choice but to accept his demand. They descended on the ground. Follow us, they said. Issei and Kokobio followed the followed the angels up the staircase to the main building. If Issei had to assume they were currently in the first heaven, they soon were in the sixth heaven. Standing before them were the four seraphs. Issei, I knew you would be coming, Michael suddenly said. You should have, he replied back. Michael took a look at Kokobio and sighed. So it seems the rumors are true. Do you plan to change the world forever at any cost, he said. Gabriel didn't seem so happy to see Kokobio. Why, Issei, she asked. You of all people should know, Gabriel. I was betrayed out of pure greed, one of the biggest sins. Like I said to Hades before I dealt the finishing blow. Everyone in the supernatural world is flawed in some way. Change is coming, he spoke up. Issei? A quiet voice called out. Issei turned around to see none other than Irina Shido. She looked like she hadn't gotten much sleep. He could see the baggie in her eyes. Irina, he said softly. She registered his voice and rushed in and bear hugged him. Issei, they said you were dead, she cried. Issei glared at the two seraphs. We didn't tell her that, Michael spoke up. Issei turned to Irina and asked, Who told you that? The devils? He asked. She nodded her head. It's a long story. Then told Irina about his betrayal and resurrection with Bahamut. Irina started to get real angry. She didn't like the statement very much. So you're telling me those devils threw you away like garbage? She seethed. Yes, Irina, he replied. She cried once again and hugged him. I'm so glad you're alive, she said. He quickly wrapped his arms around her to comfort her. I've decided I'm going to come with you, she said. That surprised everyone in the room. Michael quickly spoke up. Are you sure, Irina? Yes, she spat. Michael sighed. He knew he couldn't do anything about it. Issei then spoke up. This is my final thing to say to the seraphs. I don't feel any resentment to you guys. However, it is your choice whether or not you guys will fight with the other factions. If you do, it's a matter of a fight to the death. I will not hold back, he spoke up. They nodded, and then Issei, Kokobio, and Irina vanished back into their magic circle. Scene break. The underworld. Back in the underworld, the four Satans have started a meeting between the elders. So what are we gonna do? One of them asks. War's coming. There's no doubt about that, another added. True, but he's still able to top all of us, the Phoenix spoke up. What you all say is correct. However, his forces are not as strong as him. We may not be able to defeat him, but his forces can be beaten, Seraphil shouted. What Seraphil says is correct. There's a small hope for victory, Akuja added. However, we know he can destroy all of us without even trying. Do you really think he would let his group fall? Even Sir Zex saw his power at the Young's Devil Gathering, an elder shouted. Silence! Sir Zex shouted angrily. That shut everyone up. Sir Zex may have been heavily injured before, but now he was back on his feet. He still had a ton of power. His power of destruction was crackling off his body as he shouted. He quickly calmed down to let Seraphil take over. She spoke up after everyone calmed down. What you all say is true. However, we will not stand here and wait for him to come destroy us all. We will fight, she shouted. They all started chattering and nodding their heads. It seemed Seraphil and the Satans had rallied the devils to fight. Seraphil then looked at Sir Zex, who nodded. They had to go to another meeting with the other factions. The four Satans then disappeared into a magic circle and reappeared back in the place with the meeting of the other three factions was held. Kuo Academy. They appeared in a room with the two seraphs, Michael, Gabriel, and Azazel, who was awake but had to use crutches since his tailbone was broken. Shemahazi and Barkiel were in the room as well. Rias and Sona and Peerage were there too. The meeting was about to begin. Well, what are we gonna do? Issei spoke very weakly. Well, we all know what we're here about. Zazel spoke weakly. Yes, Michael added. Well, what are we gonna do? Seraphon asked. Are we in agreement that we need to join forces to have a chance of winning? Zerzak asked. I'm in, Zazel replied. They looked to the angels then. Fine, we will fight too, they agreed finally. Before anyone could speak again, Michael spoke up. However, I have some bad news, he said. What's the bad news? Seraphon asked. Issei visited heaven earlier, he replied. What? Seraphon shouted. He had someone with him too, he said weakly. Who? Azazel. Michael was silent. Who? Azazel asked. Michael was silent. No one wanted to know. Kokobeel, he replied. The whole room was in chaos after that statement. How? Seraphon screeched. He probably broke him out, Zerzek added. Most likely, Azazel muttered. What about Hades? Shouldn't he be guarding the area? Seraphon asked. The Kakatus River was of the underworld, so it did fall in Hades' domain. It seems Hades has fallen in battle, Gabriel replied. Everyone was silent at that. Everyone went silent. It was even more that one of the most powerful gods were killed by Issei. It dawned on them just how strong he really was. So as a cadre class fallen angel now on his side, Seraphon muttered. Looks like that. Izzle added. But before anyone could speak, the whole room darkened. Everyone got anxious and prepared for attack. Saw a purple mist with what looked like snakes in the middle of the curling around. Two silhouettes. The mist vanished, revealing Orphis, the Ouroboros dragon, and Cow Cow. It seemed the Chaos Brigade decided to make an appearance. Orphis, Seraphon muttered. Everyone was still on edge with the new arrivals. What do you guys want? Azazel asked curiously. We are here to help you, Cow Cow spoke up. Everyone was shocked to their cores. Did they hear him right? Ophis wanted to help? I will offer a truce for right now, now that the Hyodo boy is more of a problem for me at the moment, Ophis spoke up. Very well, you have a deal, Ouroboros, Seraphon agreed. So will you fight with us, Zerzek asked. Yes, the Chaos Brigade will fight against him and his group, Ophis replied. Good, Azazel muttered. Until then, Ophis spoke up before leaving with Cow Cow. Everyone was shocked at how it all turned out. It seemed like they had a viable plan and the help of a dragon god to fight against Issei and his new group. They had a small glimpse of hope. They didn't know what Issei was planning. Something, however, that would help him. Scene break. Issei, Kokobeel, and Irina. The three of them had just entered the magic circle that was destined for Kyoto. Issei planned on recruiting Yasaka and the Shinto gods. They were at the bottom of the hill, which had the stairs upwards toward the shrine that housed Yasaka. Okay, guys, listen up. We're here without warning. No sudden movements or fighting, Issei spoke. Irina nodded and Kokobeel spoke up. Fine by me, he shrugged. Issei nodded and then turned and led them up the hill. When they got to the hill, the shrine was revealed and they were in awe. Even Kokobeel couldn't deny it. It was a true sight to see. Issei had expected something like this. After all, Yakasaka was the leader of the Yokais. He quickly walked up to the two gigantic doors and knocked loudly. A few moments later, they opened, revealing a shrine maiden in a kimono. How can I help you? She asked cautiously. I wish to speak with Yasaka, he replied. She blinked a few times and then narrowed her eyes. Why? She asked. Something she needs to hear that will affect her life either way, Issei replied. Something she needs to hear that will affect her life either way, he replied in a commanding voice. She flinched as she heard his voice. It was like a king over his subjects. It was a powerful one at that. She quickly backed up and motioned for them to follow her. She led them down a hallway, and at the end was a gigantic set of doors. The Shrine Maiden told them to wait outside and went into the room. A few minutes later, she came out and told them to come in. Once they walked in the room, they weren't shocked to see it like a messy office with papers everywhere. She was a faction leader, so she had a lot of work to do. The moment Issei saw Yasaka, he felt his instincts kicking again. He groaned as he realized what Bahamut and Drake said about mating was right. She was incredibly beautiful. She had long golden hair and had curled the white tips at the end. She wore a golden honeyed kimono that flowed past her knees. She must have known Issei was staring at her, since she gave him a wink, which caused him to blush. Forcing it down and regaining his composure, he spoke up. Lady Yasuka, I've come here today with an offer, he said. She raised her eyebrow before speaking up. Oh, what kind of offer? She replied. She had a flirty tone in her voice. Issei then got deadly serious. There's a war coming between my group and the three factions. We would like you to join us, he spoke up. That had caught her off her guard really fast. First off, what caused the war, and why should I join your side? She asked, intrigued. He then again explained once again how he was betrayed and how he got back into the world of the living. He also explained what his group currently was. She looked very upset and disgusted at the same time. She had never heard of that kind of behavior from the devils and the fallen before. She knew they had their moments, but this was just shocking to say the least. She was silent for a good bit of time. What is your names? She asked. Issei Hyodo. This is Irina Shido. An angel who joined my side, and Kokobil, who was freed from the prison of Cocytus after Hades was defeated by me, he spoke up. Yasaka's eyes quickly widened. Hades? Defeated? The god of the dead? Hades lost? You beat him? She asked. Yes, he is no more. Bahamut's strength is something greater than the Great Red and Ophis, he replied. She had heard stories of the Annihilation Dragon God, but to witness the power it had firsthand was something else. Issei had summoned the Armageddon's descent, and everyone awed that the power was releasing. Very well, Issei Hyodo. You have my support in the upcoming war. I will speak with Amaterasu, and the other Shintos to see what they will do, she spoke up finally. Thank you very much, Lady Yasuka, he bowed. Oh, please, no formalities or honorifics. Just call me Yasuka, Issei. She held that same flirty tone in her voice again. Issei quickly blushed once again, but he was able to force it down. He motioned to Irina and Kokobil, who nodded. The three of them disappeared into a magic circle, leaving Kyoto. They were headed back to Vali's mansion. Issei knew that there was going to be some explaining that needed to be done. The moment they saw Kokobil, they wouldn't be too happy to see him at all. As they reappeared at Vali's mansion out of the circle, Issei was dead in his thoughts. They had all had weapons ready and aimed to kill. Kokobil had a grin on his face, seeing that everyone gets so defensive. Issei, what is Sharkface doing here? Vali asked. She wasn't too thrilled. Tiamat just looked amused, while the three fallen angels were fuming. What the hell, man? Donaseek screeched. Issei sighed and then spoke up. He is joining us. I broke him out of Cocytus after I killed Hades, he said. That shocked them all. Tiamat was rubbing her legs together at his statement. Hades, the God of the Dead was killed? Valley muttered. Everyone had similar thoughts after hearing his claim. Yep, I decapitated him in the underworld, he replied. They didn't expect that at all. We also have some more allies. Yasaka agreed to aid us when we needed. She said she would also speak to the Shinto pantheon to see what they think, Issei spoke. So it's inevitable, huh? Rainer asked. Pretty much, Kala Werner added. Until that day comes, we will prepare and hone our skills. I will continue to gather more allies and dragons. Issei spoke up. He then had an idea. Who is the next group of people who will become a dragon? He spoke up. Everyone blinked as I understood his statement. 3 hands raised. Kuroko, Kokobio, and Irina. All wanted to do it. He then spoke up. When I do this, you will pass out from the pain of your bones restructuring. And once you wake again, you will be part dragon. You will have more energy reserves and some more abilities than you normally had. Are you guys ready? He spoke up. They all nodded. He then formed 3 spheres of dragon essence and put them on their heads, and watched as they all glowed white as the essence was absorbed. He watched as they all dropped on the ground unconscious. Hey, Tiamat. He then turned to Tiamat. Hey, Tiamat, come here, he spoke. He had a job for her to do. Yes, Issei, she asked. I need you to do a job for me, he spoke up. She was surprised. What? She asked curiously. Since you can hide your energy quite well and take on different forms, I want you to snoop around Kuo Academy, see what the devils are planning. I'm sure Sona and Rias have information on it. I need you to find out what they know, he spoke. She thought about it for a second and then nodded. Okay, will do. He gave her a smile and hugged her, which both surprised her and made her blush. Thank you, he whispered. He got a kiss on the cheek in response. His mouth was open and gaping at her. Close your mouth or you'll catch flies, she teased him. He quickly composed himself and walked back to the group. He heard her vanish in her own magic circle and go to work on her end. He was walking back when he started to feel sore, but this was different. It wasn't just his energy, but his whole body flared in pain. That's when he heard a crack. He quickly fell on his knees and screamed as he started to feel more bones cracking. Everyone rushed over to already see him on the ground unconscious. The 3rd stage of his evolution had begun. That was Chapter 12. Enemies gathering and testing limits. Final. Chapter 13. Sneaking around. None of them knew what to do. They all knew what it was and what it meant, though. He was going to be out cold for at least 2 weeks. The only thing they could do was let it go through its course and wait for him to wake up. They wondered what it would do to his mentality, and how far it would change him. Everyone was worried about him. Rainier knew he had a drastic change since she met him in the realm of the dead. She knew it instantly. He wasn't the perverted boy she went on a date with before. He was, for lack of better terms, bitter and vengeful at his betrayal. He would do anything to right the wrongs that had been committed that day, even if it meant going against everything he knew and accepting a new truth to his reality. Boy, it was a big reality check. To go from a pawn in his peerage to holding responsibility for creating a dragon faction was one hell of a switch for anyone to accept. She knew he had built walls around the pain that was embedded deep within him, but slowly over time they started to crumble with everyone he added to his new life. One thing in her mind was the fact that was going to go to waste or not. If everything was going to take another 180-degree turn in a few weeks. She knew after he woke up he had another few days before the final stage began, and that's what made her wonder about his mental state. She also knew that if he experienced heartbreak again, it would be disastrous. That was putting it lightly. He would obliterate the people who'd caused it without any remorse whatsoever. Renee was brought out of her thoughts as Kuroka spoke up. "What do we do?" she asked aloud. Bella looked around to the others and spoke up. "If what we know is true, his body is currently undergoing a change. All we can do is let nature take its course and wait until he wakes up," she said. Surprisingly, Kokobeel decided to speak. "I agree with the brat. We're dealing with a power incomprehensible to any of us here. If we try to do something foolish like forcibly trying to wake him, it could have a backlash effect that would release a ton of destructive power," he said. Everyone just blinked. Millie turned to glare at him for calling her a brat, but she agreed with what he said was true. If something they did to try to help him went wrong, it could have unforeseen consequences. Rainier and Donacy exchanged glances with each other before one of them could speak up, but Callowiner beat them to it. "Let's get him inside and settled in a room. We'll take turns watching over him. We don't know what to expect out of this," she said. Everyone instantly agreed and nodded with her. Belly and Kokobeel took his arms, while Rainier and Donacy took his legs. Kuroka and Callowiner took a hold of his midsection, so that with all six of them, he wouldn't be dropped. Soon he was in a bed. Rainier had taken the first shift of watching over him. In the living room, a conversation began to take place among the rest of his group. "Does anyone know exactly what kind of evolution Yodo is undergoing?" Kokopila spoke up. Everyone turned to him, confused. "Why? What does that have to do with anything?" LeFay asked, confused. Kokopil sighed and rubbed his forehead. He felt a headache coming on from everyone's ignorance about the situation. Evolutions have a very profound effect on the person or creature that undergoes it. Depending on his type he is dealing with, the effects could be drastic or not at all," he explained. Valley looked confused at his statement. "Where did you learn all of this? You were never this smart at the Grigori," she chuckled. Kokobeel glared at her before sighing. "I may be a warmonger, but I'm not a complete idiot," he replied dryly. Valley looked serious for a moment. "Well, what we know right now is that his body is changing to handle the power of Bahamut. It was a four-stage evolution he had. First and second stages were his strength, and his energy reserves being increased drastically. The third stage is where his body starts to completely rebuild itself for the final stage, where he becomes a real dragon before reverting back to human form," Valley explained. Kokobeel was thinking for a bit before even speaking up. We may have something to worry about when he reverts back to human. His personality may change a bit. I doubt it will affect us all, however. Those people who betrayed him wouldn't want to be near him," he said. Hiroka looked up confused before speaking. "So you're saying he will be more wrath-filled at the other factions for what happened?" she asked for information. Kokobeel looked deadly serious. "Precisely," he replied. That's when Vali noticed something was wrong. "Where's Tiamat?" she asked out loud. Everyone looked around and found out the Dragon King was nowhere in sight. Kuroka decided to speak up. "I saw her talking with Issei before he fell unconscious," she said. Everyone mused on what she could be doing. Scene break. QO. Or somewhere in QO. Tiamat, for lack of better terms, was still confused on where to start. She knew she would eventually have to spy on the devils and see what she could get from them. She finally decided of what course of action to take. School was already out, so she was gonna sneak around the Kyoto residence to see what she could find out. With that set in her mind, she continued forward. Soon before she knew it, she was already in front of the house. She quickly masked her presence so no one would know she was there. She snuck around to a window where the living room was and started listening in. She started to hear them talking about something. Are you sure that's a good idea? It was a male voice. She didn't really know anything about them, but she knew Issei was with them before and didn't take too kindly to being betrayed. Kiba, we have no choice. We need more pieces to be able to combat him. You know the power he had. It was Rias who spoke up next. Tiamat wondered what they were planning. Bucho, those two are just normal humans, even if they know how to fight, Kiba replied. Tiamat was still confused on this. That is enough, Kiba. The decision is final, she said. It was eerily silent now. Tiamat felt a dreading cessation coming on. She quickly started to step away from the house, thinking she may have been found out. She dashed away as she saw the front door open and the whole peerage step out. She was masking her presence, though. She knew they shouldn't be able to sense her clearly. She then looked at the girl with white hair, and knew she was able to sense her with Senjutsu. Where are you? Ria shouted with authority. Tiamat didn't like the situation. She figured Issei wouldn't care if she thrashed them about a bit either. It was seemingly like this was going to happen soon. She noticed the knight of the group started to go towards her way as the rest of them followed. She quickly dodged a slash from a sword that cut open the bushes she was hiding behind. Who are you? Rias asked seriously. She's glowing crimson. Tiamat smirked and stood up. A very close friend of your ex-pawn. Issei Hyodo, she said in a flirty tone. Everyone was shocked at the narrowed eyes. What's your name? Kiva asked. She turned to the knight and spoke in a bone-chilling tone. Oh, me? Allow me to introduce myself. I am Tiamat, the Chaos Karma Dragon, one of the 5 Dragon Kings, she said with a grin. Everyone shivered as she let her power leak, and they now knew what he was gaining some very powerful allies. Rias looked conflicted before speaking up. What do you want? She asked. Seriously. Tiamat was amused at the girl. I bring bad news, devils. Issei Hyodo doesn't like what happened to him that much. Prepare yourselves for the war that is coming straight at you. Issei has made it very clear to our group that your heads will be mounted on a wall when he is done, she said with an eerie grin. Everyone flinched at his words. They knew they couldn't fight her at all. She was a Dragon King, and they were barely a peerage. They had no choice but to back off. They quickly summoned their own magic circles and teleported away from a fight that was about to happen. Tiamat looked upset. She didn't get to toss them around. She didn't get to toss them around for a bit. Sighing to herself, she made her own circle and hopped in and went back to the mansion. Where she arrived there, she knew something was wrong. She walked into the house to see the group minus Kurika in the living room. Valley looked to her and was a little angry at her being gone. Where have you been? She questioned her. Tiamat just tilted her head. Issei sent me on a mission to spy on the devils to see what kind of information I could get from them, she replied. Valley's eyes widened as she lowered her head. Tiamat noticed and decided to speak up. What happened? She asked. Rainier spoke up. Issei has begun his 3rd stage of evolution and is unconscious, she answered. Tiamat's eyes widened. He'd already undergone it? In her head there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered. So the group sat down and filled her in on the details of what happened. She was listening intently on what was being said. It seems that he was going through a rough patch. Kokobel looked up at Tiamat and spoke up. So what did you find out? He asked. Fuck. Everyone else looked to her to see her answer. Seems the devils are moving to counter us as he thought. His old peerage decided to bring 2 new recruits in. I don't know who, though. I did have a confrontation with them before they escaped in a magic circle, she replied. Kokopil was in thought for a moment. It seems like they are mobilizing for war, he mused. Vali was wondering what he was thinking. He was the one she would ask him about the topic. He was a warmonger. He was a warmonger after all. What do you think we can expect? She asked him. He looked at her for a moment before answering. Honestly, anything. In times of war, the factions are unpredictable. If they have all united, that's only more against us. Not to mention if they've gathered any more allies, she replied. Valley thought for a moment. So pretty much expect a full-scale battle like a great war, but worse? Valley asked. Everyone was shocked. If that's what they were going to expect, it was going to be very bloody. Yes, he said. With that in their minds, they continued on about their day, while still thinking about Issei and his evolution he was going through. They knew it was going to be a couple of long weeks without him. They would manage, though. They had to. Scene break, underworld. In the office of one of the 4 great Satans, Zerzek had gotten a call from his sister Rias. He was told that they had some information that he needed to hear. That it pertained to Issei. Hyodo was still a rough subject for him. He was defeated and his defeat was handed to him on a silver platter. He couldn't do anything to stop the power that he had at his disposal. He looked up to see his sister Peerage enter the room. He quickly stood up and told them to take a seat, and they would begin. So what is it that you have to tell me? He asked curiously. His sister Rias was the one to speak up. Issei has gathered some allies. Found one of them snooping around the house last night, she said. Sir Zex raised an eyebrow at this. Oh, who was it? Did they say of anything importance? Rias looked solemn for the moment. She was the Chaos Karma Dragon God Tiamat, and Issei plans to mount our heads on a wall after he's done, she replied. That unnerved Sir Zex greatly. Issei Hyodo was becoming stronger and stronger every day, not just in individual strength, but overall numbers as well. The situation was getting worse. They feared it was counting down. They were hoping to buy some time before the inevitable, but it seems like that wasn't going to be possible. He was thinking intently on what to do. He looked to his sisters and her peers and spoke up. I'm going to inform Seraphil of this. If the danger starts to increase, we may need to pull you guys out of Kuo and back to the underworld, he said. They nodded and got up to leave. For now, keep a close eye around you at all times. With that, they returned to Kuo, leaving Sir Zex alone to think about what he was going to do. First, he was going to stop by Seraphil's office and inform her. Then he would stop by the Grigori and tell Azazel. Before that, he knew it. He had already jumped into his own circle and appeared outside of Seraphil's office. He started towards the door and continued forwards. When Seraphil noticed the door open, she was surprised to see him. Sir Zex, what's going on? She asked, confused. He looked solemn for a moment. We have some news that Rias found out, he said. She leaned forward and mentioned for him to continue. It seems Issei has been gathering more allies. Tiamat was snooping around the house and it ended in a standoff when she said some colorful words, he explained. That alarmed Seraphil. It seems the situation was getting worse and worse every day. She looked to Sir Zex seriously. What did they say? When Issei is done, he plans to mount their heads on a wall, he replied curtly. That shocked her. This is troubling. First Kokopil, now Tiamat. I assume Tiamat was the first one he went to recruit. We need to find out where his group's location is, she said. Sir Zex nodded and agreed with her. It was starting to get out of control. So what are you going to do now? She asked. He looked at her for a second before replying. I'm going to inform Azazel and see if he has any ideas on how to locate him, he replied. She nodded, and Sir Zex disappeared into another magical circle. continuing forward is in his goal. However, he didn't know about the storm that was coming his way. That was chapter 13, Sneaking Around, part 1. I hope you guys did enjoy, and I'm sorry for the wacky upload schedule, but it's coming down soon. We're getting it done. I'm working on a schedule, but for now, this has been Cargo Voiceovers. Goodbye.